Ted Van Alst is the Portland State University Director of Indigenous Nations and Native American Studies. There, he researches Native American literature and film. He is the author of Sacred Smokes, which came out this past year. Okay, so do you want to start by just telling me a little bit, like your basic about yourself things, where you're from, what you do, what you write, what you teach, etc.?
What can I tell you? I'm a high school dropout, so I have a GED and a PhD from the University of Connecticut. I did my undergrad at the University of Maine, Prescott, a little tiny, super awesome university in northern Maine. I was at the University of Connecticut after I did my PhD. They kept me around, so I was on a tenure track there. I left after a couple of years and became the Dean of American Indian Affairs at Yale. So we lived in New Haven for, I was going into my 5th year of administration. I really missed teaching. So I ended up taking a job, chair in the Native Studies Department at the University of Montana. And when I got there, I had started writing, creative fiction at the urging of some folks that I hold near and dear. And so when I got to Montana, a couple people, like Tiffany Midge in particular, was like, you really should write and send your stuff out. And so it published one of the stories in the book, the magazine called Raven Chronicles. And then I really started writing. I mean, I still write academically, I have book chapters coming out and all that kind of stuff. But I moved, I finished a book, a whole book, a linked story collection I'll read from tonight. And then I accepted an offer of Director of Indigenous Nations Studies at Portland State University. And I'm a city guy, so I'm really happy to be back in the city. And Portland is a great writer's city, so I wrote another book. I'm working on a third one, and still writing academic work too. I'm working on a couple of book chapters for some different collections.
Jim Crace said, "To ask a novelist to talk about his writing is like asking somebody to cook about their dancing." Despite this, it was clear from the beginning of our interview that Dr. Van Alst was a storyteller, both in the way that he writes and in the way that he speaks. So you didn't start writing until, not later in life.
That's later.
But yeah.
No, but you're right. I mean, here's the thing. I was a writer, in my 20s. I mean, I started writing, pretty seriously in my early 20s. And mostly essays. I never wrote any fiction. I wrote essays, sort of performative essays. I used to read in clubs in Chicago, punk rock bars, stuff like that. And then, life happened. I have kids and everything like that. And I was working in a mill, and I was like, oh man, I can't do this. So I worked one day, and this guy was on my crew as a supervisor, and this guy, Oscar, he was like, Oscar, how old are you, man? I'm 38. I'll retire in 2 years. I thought he was seriously in his early 60s. Working in a lumber mill, I'll take a lot out of you. So it's I gotta go back to school. I can't do this. So I went back to school, and I was 36 when I went back to school, 37. So I did that. I did my undergrad in 2 years, 2 summers. I was focused. I did my master's in 2 years. I did my PhD in a year because, it's expensive to go to school. You have loans and stuff like that. So anyway, I did that, and I started writing, academically. And one of my buddies from back in Chicago was like, "You were a good writer before, but holy moly, this school thing has really done wonders for you." So, but it was hard because went to Chicago public schools. I dropped out. I mean, I didn't know how to write a paper. I went to college, but I tell story. I was a good storyteller or whatever. My grandpa was a good storyteller. My dad occasionally could tell a good story, but, it's a storyteller. And so people, poets and other writers in Native Lit were like, you got to write these things down. You really do. And so I'm glad that I did finally write them when I did. I mean, the book was published this year, right, in August. Yeah, I'm 53. So that's my first, sort of fiction collection. That's pretty late in life. You're over 50, But yeah, if I think I couldn't have written the book in this way without having the education behind me. I wouldn't, because it's very theoretical in the structure and breadth and the voice. It's all there, I think, comes through, because now I know what it is. I would write kind of like that before, but not in a well-crafted way, because I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't have the training or education. But yeah, I think the books come when they're ready, and now it's ready. I wrote another one, and I'm on my third one, and so, this one just came out. So, I mean, they're just now that it's just there.
In addition to writing, you teach and watch a lot of film. How do you balance all of your passions?
Like I said, I mean, you have to make time for writing, and for me, I write after the world goes to bed. I really, and I think it comes from, when my kids were smaller and everybody's gone to bed and you finally have some time. I do most of my writing from about 1 till 5 in the morning, on the weekends. Sometimes during the week, I usually go to bed about 2:30 or 3, and I get up around 8. So it's just that. It's that way. And working at a mill, we work swing shifts, so I'm just used to that kind of less sleep. I just don't need as much sleep, I guess. And the older I get, I need even less. So you make that time. For the writing, I noticed, like, a lot of times stuff comes, and I just now think I have a phone. I used to have to pull over. I'd be driving from work and I'd make notes for a story or something. Now I just email it to myself. And so then when I get a chance to write, I go back over all my story notes and then put them in a Word doc, and then I can pick through. Sometimes it's just a line for a character or a piece of internal dialogue, and sometimes it becomes a whole story from that one line, depending on what the story wants to do. I know that kind of sounds cliche, but stories just kind of show up. I got to tell this story. I got to do this one. It's hard to force writing, Academic writing, I'll do my office. And so I'll just tell my assistant, I got to work on this thing. And the door's open just a crack. And I put in the headphones and listen to music and just write.
Representation in media is something that is very important to me. When I was little, my favorite princess was Belle because she had brown hair and brown eyes like me. I know as a white woman I can only understand so much of inaccurate representation, so I was curious to hear Dr. Alst's views on the subject. It's very clear that you talk a lot about the Native community, both within the writer community and then the film and other media. Do you want to talk for a minute about why you think representation is so important?
I don't think we have enough time to cover it all. Representation is important because in a lot of places in the country, a lot of people, they won't meet Native folks, right? So their only experience of them is through the media. And if your portrayal is continuously, either of a mascot or a cartoon or, some stereotype, like on the Indian episode of your favorite show, almost every TV show has that Indian episode, right? And it's always a flat, two-dimensional character. And so because of the influence of Hollywood, general population doesn't really see Natives as actual people in the world, as contemporary people. And so you'll see it online. I mean, just go to any comment section of any story about Native people, and instantly you'll get just, vitriol and all this stuff. There's never any acknowledgement of the humanity of people.
Along with that, what advice would you give to writers and like just future authors who are trying to like change the climate of representation, especially in fiction.
I think one of the things that my students key in on when I teach native lit or teach native film, one of the things they like, native and non-native students alike, is that they always tell me it's the authenticity, right? Because I think so many of them have been exposed to the thing that you just asked me about, that when they hear real native voices, when native people tell stories, and when they write or they make film or produce culturally, and it's a lot of times the first time that people have had any interaction, they're like, oh, it's just authentic. And so I think authenticity matters. And I'm not saying don't write speculative fiction, don't do that thing, but be that voice, be an authentic voice. And I think when you write in those convincing ways, people respond to it. And the writing then has a genuine cast that you don't find in other places where people are playing Indian or whatever term you want to add to it. So if you're writing, write your truth. And if your truth is science fiction or your truth is horror, whatever it happens to be, write from that place.
What is the most difficult part of your writing process? And also, are you the kind of person who edits as you write, or do you just kind of like first draft, go for it?
I edit as I write. I'm really conscious of my words when I'm writing. And then I go back in 4 or 5 times. And if there's something there that I don't know what the there is, I wait. And I come back a couple weeks later and edit again. I know people ask about writing and what's your favorite part of writing? I think the editing. Okay. Because it's done mostly, and that's a good thing. But it's also, it really gives you an opportunity to really, really think about what you're saying and to really, really look at how it's going to look to somebody else. And so, some passage you might read out loud, or you might just let it sit with you for a while. But the editing part, I think is the best part and the hardest part, because sometimes you go back in and you're like, I should change that. And then you have this argument with yourself. You wrote it that way for a reason. Are you sure you want to change it? And so then I'll like copy paste and then edit it, and I'll look at them both, and then in connection to everything else. So that can be difficult, but I think the editing is really satisfying. It's really rewarding.
I am currently in the process of editing something that I'm writing. It's encouraging to hear that the editing process is worth it. I'm really glad to hear you say the editing is worth it, because I'm in the middle of editing a big project, and it's a struggle.
Yeah, it really is. You got to have those talks with yourself. Like,
do I really want to? Yeah.
Yeah. So come back to it. If you can't make the decision right then and there, just let it sit.
Yeah, I'm currently on a break.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Yeah. I hear you.
Yeah. So I'm glad to know that it's worth it in the end.
Yes.
What is the best writing advice you have received?
I guess the best advice was my own advice. It's the advice I give to students. I'm like, most of what you're writing, if you're not a writer, most of what you're doing as a student, when you write and you sit down to start writing, is junk. It's crap. Your first paragraph, which is your most important one, is just junk. So what I want you to do, I tell my students, I'm like, write something else. Write a grocery list. Write, just a laundry list of things that you need to get done. Get the writing going. It's almost like, you're going to do a painting and you sketch out and you throw out the first couple until you're really going and getting to what you want to put down. I think that's important for writing. So I think it's really important to know, unless you're coming to your story with notes that you've already taken, or something that you already want to say. But even then, be really careful. And if you have to write a recap of the day, or just get it out there, because once you start that right, then oh yeah, and then it just starts coming right, and then you're just like, yeah, we're there.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Do you have anything else you'd like to say, or do you think you're done?
Keep writing.
Okay.
Even if you're not writing, take notes for a time when you can write, and then make time to write. You know, writing is learning, but it's telling and celebrating your story and other people's stories, and so just keep writing.